Hello, I'm Faith Mason. I'm Ann Elsbach's wife. Thank you for coming. We are gathering here in cyberspace today to honor the life of Ann, who played so many roles in our lives. First, we will see some short reminiscences that various people have sent in. Then we will see a biographical slideshow reflecting some of Ann's interests and aspects of her life. And then we will have a video that Ensley has put together of various photographs that she has with more reflections and memories. So here we go.
My name is Robin, and Ann was my mom. She was my other mom, so much better than stepmom. And I met her when I was about 3 years old. Don't remember the first time, but I do remember very early on seeing her blue pickup truck out at the curb at my house and being quite intrigued at a pickup truck. And I have always loved pickup trucks ever since. The most important thing to me about Ann was how much she loved my mom and how she showed that. And one shining example of that is from a birthday when I was, I don't know, maybe 14 or something. My mom really liked cows and cow things. And Ann got someone to make a plywood cutout painted cow that was like 4 feet tall. And she got it delivered and set up in the backyard without mom knowing. And so during the birthday dinner, various people would then go to the window and look out and comment on the garden or the weather or something. And it took a while, but finally mom looked out in the backyard and saw this cow and loved it. And we kept that cow for many years. We moved it to a different house until the paint was just absolutely peeling. But that was just an example of Anne's creativity and sneakiness and joy in life, and showing people around her how much she cared. So those are just two sweet memories of Anne, and we really appreciate you all being here today.
I'm Eric Frazier. I was technically Ann's stepson, but as Robin alluded to, that wasn't a term we used in our family. She was my oma, or other mother, and I was her boips, short for boy person. That eventually morphed into yums for young man as I got older. Ann was just that, another mother. I always felt blessed to have two moms and a dad growing up. She carved out a unique role, not filling a void, but finding ways to bring her unique, boundary-pushing character into her parenting. When I was learning to drive, for example, while most of it was in Woodside High parking lot with my mom, Ann was the first person to let me drive on city streets before I had my learner's permit. She was also the one who taught me to look in the rearview mirror, not turn my head back to look when I passed freeway on-ramps to look for cops. As flying was one of Ann's great passions, I have many fond memories of family trips. We used to fly into a small strip in Columbia, California, and camp there, right on the side of the airport. One trip, we came back with an extra passenger, a kitten named Rue that we had found and nursed back to health. We flew to Trinity Lake many times. On one of the trips there, we were stranded overnight when our plane got a flat tire. Trinity Center being as small as it is, there were no spares that fit, and one had to be brought to us. One less than fond memory from flying is one that exemplifies Ann's personality and demeanor. Shortly after takeoff from Palo Alto on a planned trip to the Nut Tree, while over San Francisco Bay, we lost oil pressure and the engine stalled. In moments like this, one's true colors come out. Ann never panicked and guided us safely to a priority landing at Hayward on the other side of the bay. Eventually, the name Oma evolved in meaning, as it was also the term our son Evan used to refer to Ann as a grandparent. Ann was a wonderful grandmother to Snickle Fritz, as she called him. Everyone had to have a nickname. The two of them spent countless hours together, exploring beaches in the Trinidad Head. I think having a new little person to share the wonders of our world with was rejuvenating for Ann's soul. Ann had a unique eye for noticing the beauty in our world. When I was looking through photos that we might use today, I looked through Ann's Facebook photos. Many of them were of the flowers, trees, and greenery that make our world beautiful and unique. I like to think that her way of noticing these things has always influenced my own view of the world as I move through it every day, and I'm grateful for that.
I'm Erica Kelly. Some of you may recall Ann talking about her friend Rana. Rana was my mom. She and Ann were college roommates, and Ann was her closest friend. My mom was also godmother to Ensley, and she was Ensley's dance teacher. And Ann was my dad's flight instructor. The whole Elsbach family was like a second family to me. They were just entwined in our family's lives in so many ways. And I'm very grateful for that. And I miss Ann very much.
As a young boy, I had so many fond memories of a visit to Aunt Marilyn, Uncle Van, and Ann each summer for about a week, and Ann always had plans for me. It was as if she liked to show me off, as if she was saying, look what I got. Whether it be a trip to the beach or taking Mindy to the ocean, and that black dog that just seemed to always want to be there. Or the Winchester Mystery House was an annual event to go visit that. But what really stuck out in my memory was she would take me to work. And she worked as a lifeguard at Santa Clara Swim Center. And that's where I got to see a lot of world-class swimmers, people that were in the Olympics training for world-class events. And I think that really influenced me a lot as far as my own swimming. And I'll never forget that. It was quite an introduction into the world of competitive swimming. As I grew into my teens, Ann and I saw less of each other, but at the same time, that doesn't mean we lost touch with each other. We'd always seem to catch up, and we'd always seem to ring up an enormous long-distance phone bill, talking to each other when we did. I remember telling her about my trip to Mexico, the first time I went to Mexico, and telling her all about Puerto Vallarta and San Blas and how beautiful it was down there. And she started giving me a little history of Puerto Vallarta. And I'll never forget this, but she, gave me all these details about Puerto Vallarta that I didn't even know about when I was down there. And I told her I didn't realize that she had ever been there. And she said she hadn't, but life is so short, you'll never reach all your destinations unless you read. And that really stuck with me. And I'll never forget that. I'll never forget how much Ann loved to share her experiences, her life experiences, her life ups and downs with the people she loved. And one of my fondest memories of late was when I was up visiting a couple of years ago. And even though Ann wasn't feeling well and didn't have a lot of strength, she still insisted that we had to go up to the Redwood Zoo and this skywalk. And Ann and Faith, took Aaron and I up there. And what ended up is Ann being the tour guide for a beautiful afternoon in the treetops of the Redwood Forest at the Redwood Zoo. And Ann would run ahead and to a point where she wanted us to see, and then she sat down and catch her breath while we were looking at stuff. And it was it was so typical Ann, giving as much as herself as she could. And that's how I always remember her. I love you so much, Ann. And I'm glad you're in a great place now. Love you.
Hi, I'm Alan Markham. I've known Ann since the early 80s. I first met Ann while I was a pre-solo student pilot. My medical was delayed, and I still wanted to fly. To learn something new about flying while waiting, I didn't know it was going to be 9 months, but I knew it was going to be a while. I scheduled time with Ann in her Taylorcraft L2, an old ragwing tail-dragger warbird, and completely different from what I'd been flying. Ann challenged me. What was I doing wanting to fly the L2 as a pre-solo student pilot? Satisfied with my answer, she proceeded to teach me to hand prop an airplane, and then, in one of the most memorable 5-second periods of my over 40 years of flying, taught me about adverse yaw. Ann and that old bird were magic.
I'm Bob Kelly. I met Ann in 1968. When I met my first wife, they were good friends. And for the next 10 years, we stayed friends with Ann. Her daughter, Ensley, and my daughter, Erica, played together. And then during that time, Ann got her pilot's license, became a certified flight instructor, and got her own airplane, a Taylorcraft. So I then, in 1978, took flying lessons with Ann. She taught me to fly, did a very good job, at least she did. She checked me out in several different airplanes. And then 48 years later, here I am, still a pilot. And I think Ann would be delighted to know that the little group that I'm a part of has now obtained another Taylorcraft L2 airplane almost exactly like the one that Ann taught me to fly in. And this is the airplane in the background there. I think Ann would be delighted to see that. So I miss Ann, and I am forever grateful for what she taught me.
Hi, this is Brent Nichols. I am the nephew of Aunt Ann and the son of Steve and Joanne Nichols, who you'll probably see somewhere else in this video. I didn't get to see Ann that as much as I would have liked when I was an adult. I think that's when they moved up north to the Eureka area. So my memories are a little bit more when was younger. But I think to me, Ann always showed up as like one of the more, to me, intelligent, cool, and together members of the family. The fact that she was a flight instructor and a pilot, I think always reminded me to some degree of my grandfather. She was one of the only people in the family that I knew that was a pilot, and it was just so cool that she did that. And one of my best memories is, I think it was for my 18th birthday, the gift she gave me. She took me and my dad up on a flight and circled the Bay Area, which was pretty cool. I'd never been able to do something like that in a small plane, and so that's always a memory. And anytime I'm in a smaller plane, I always think of Ann in that way. And one of my regrets, I think, was that I never got to visit Ann and Faith up in Humboldt, Eureka, Trinidad area. But we miss her a lot, and I also want to give a quick shout out to Faith as well, who I remember when I was a kid being the kind of the guinea pig for her master's program. I think it was right here and in the dining room over there. But excited to make this video, and we miss her a lot.
Hi, we're the Nichols. Ann was my sister-in-law.
And I was Steve's
Half.
sister.
And we're making this video in honor of Ann, who was very intelligent and very smart, and we loved her dearly. We have fond memories of Thanksgiving and visiting in Trinidad and Eureka. My favorite memory is all the times we would go to Hobie's restaurant and have breakfast with her in Mountain View. We miss her dearly, and we thank you for putting this video together.
Yep. Dad, what do you remember about Ann?
That I didn't get to see her very much. Not enough.
What do you remember about her personality?
She's always pretty well upbeat.
And what do you think that she meant to your dad? Her dad and your dad?
Oh, he really did. She really liked her dad.
And what about him with her?
Same.
Ann Ensley Elsbach was born at 2:22 a.m. on February 22, 1942, in Hollywood, California, where her father, Nick Nichols, was stationed in the military. Shortly thereafter, and for part of World War II, he was in the Philippines, often flying as radio man on military flights. He had flight training, but did not pilot military runs. During the time he was away, Ann's mother, Marilyn, moved back to Oakland, California, where her great-aunts, Myrtle, Mabel, and Carrie lived. They had mostly raised Marilyn, and they were nuts about Ann. In her 20s, Ann met a remarkable man, Jerry Elsbach. They had many interests in common, including a sense of a past life together in ancient Egypt. They found that they both wanted to have a child, and so they decided to do that together. They remained close and part of our extended family until his passing in 2016. Their daughter, Ensley Elizabeth Elsbach, was born on February 4, 1969, to the great happiness of her parents. I met her when she was 13, while Ann and I were getting together. Ann had many interests. One of the biggest, as you all know, was flying. She got into flying through a backdoor route. She had spent a year abroad in Paris at 19. On her flight home, the aircraft experienced depressurization, the oxygen masks dropped, and the plane did a sudden steep dive to an altitude of greater air pressure. Ann was terrified and thought that the plane would go down. After she landed safely, she swore she would never fly again. But in 1975, her partner Joyce suggested a summer trip to Europe. Ann did not want to make the flight, but also realized that she did not want to be ruled by that fear, and so, paradoxically, and true to her nature, she ran straight toward that fear and started taking flying lessons with Amelia Reed of Reed Aviation in San Jose. She told Amelia that she wanted to learn to fly, but that was not actually true, and sometimes Ann threw up after lessons. After one early lesson, Amelia told Ann that she was doing pretty well for a woman. Well, that pushed Ann's buttons, and it lit a fire under her. Not only did she earn her pilot's license, but she went on to become a flight instructor, first at Reed Aviation. She decided to buy a plane of the sort she had taken lessons in, a Taylorcraft L2. The one she found was in Kentucky, so Ann and two friends, Joyce Fulton and Ann Jeffrian, drove to Kentucky in Ann's VW camper to pick up the plane. The plane had no radio and few instruments. As Ann flew it west, she often would be following the roads across Texas, New Mexico, and Arizona, and sometimes her airspeed could not even keep up with a camper on the road below. The plane had to be rebuilt when she arrived in California. One of the wooden wing spars was found to be rotted from water damage due to a leak in the fabric covering the wing surface. So the spar had to be remade and a new cloth covering put on, sealed with airplane glue. Not a great thing to breathe, a toxin. Then the plane, 48101, had a new life. Ann started her own flying club, Fairweather Flyers, to give instruction in 101, and she and some partners bought another plane, a Taylorcraft F-19, 2002 Alpha, a red plane, also a tailwheel. Ann also joined the instructors group at West Valley Flying Club in Palo Alto. I met Ann there at West Valley when I started taking flying lessons from her in 1982, and that is another story. In 1985, she became the general manager of that club. Over her time there, the club tripled in size of membership and aircraft available. Some years on, Ann went in with some partners to buy a Cessna 180, also a tailwheel, 180 Hotel Bravo. The most notable trips we took in Hotel Bravo were to Trinity Center, a small town in the Trinity Alps, to go camping at an unofficial campsite, Twin Gulch, on the side of Trinity Lake. There are many stories about those camping trips. The rattlesnake that I thought would bite me at the homemade latrine, the pizza baked in campfire coals with sardines, the best pizza ever. The bears that made off with a bag full of camping food and left it in a large pack of poison oak, so we left it there. The folks who stopped in a houseboat at the inlet below us, to whom we dropped the hint that we'd like them to go elsewhere, by appearing out of the woods to ask them, by any chance, do you have any Grey Poupon? Which was a line from a TV ad. They immediately replied with good humor that yes, in fact they did, but soon they moved on to a new inlet. Anne was a very athletic person and enjoyed many sports. One time she tried water skiing behind the boat of some friends at Trinity. She also enjoyed cross-country skiing. We occasionally skied around Trinity Center. We went to Badger Pass near Yosemite. The most fun time was when we went up Mount Hamilton, east of San Jose, which gets snow very occasionally. I do not recall how we got up to the top where the observatories are, because usually when there is snow there, the roads are closed. We skied some of the side roads. One of Anne's favorite activities was bicycling, starting at about age 6, when her grandmother bought her first bike. We had a tandem bike for a while, a very fun activity, especially for two people with such different abilities. Ann and Ensley rode in the San Francisco AIDS Ride, a fundraiser, 550 miles from San Francisco to Los Angeles over 8 days, with hundreds of others, camping out every night. For Ann's 50th birthday in 1992, we had an all-day party. In the morning, we went roller skating on the Stanford campus. Ann's dad, with whom Ann had done a lot of skating as a child, came to join us. He and Ann smiled so much that day. In the afternoon, we went kite flying on the beach at Half Moon Bay, and then retreated to the Chart House restaurant for dinner. Here you will see, among others, Kalpana Chawla, one of Ann's former students, who went on to become a NASA astronaut, and most unfortunately was one of the ones on the shuttle Columbia STS-107, which disintegrated when it re-entered the atmosphere due to damage done on the wing at launch. I planned to retire from the San Jose Public Library in 2004, when I would turn 55. I found that as my domestic partner, Anne could not continue on my health insurance plan. Same-sex marriage was not yet available in the United States, but I asked the San Jose Retirement Board if they would recognize a legal marriage that had taken place elsewhere. The board agreed, and so Anne and I and 14 of our family and friends, including all our kids and Jerry and Marg, all flew to Vancouver, British Columbia, and were married on the deck of the Inn at the Quay in New Westminster, British Columbia, on June 24, 2004. I retired right after that. We did not know at the time, of course, how important it would be for Anne to have that insurance after she was diagnosed with cancer in 2021. That insurance saved us about $300,000 in medical bills. In 2006, Eric and Jen's son, Evan, our grandson, was born. We moved to Humboldt County in 2007 to be able to enjoy him and help with his care. After Jen and Eric went back to work, Anne did much of the child care. Robin also moved to Humboldt County in 2007. In 2010, we went on an adventure to Cape Canaveral to watch the launch of the space shuttle STS-130, with another of Anne's students, Steve Robinson, on board. Evan was old enough to have some understanding of the experience. We also visited some of the exhibits at the Cape. Anne tried one of the flight simulators, maybe a jet. People standing around nearby could see, on TV screens above, what the pilot was seeing on the simulator. Anne was the only one who did not repeatedly crash. She did so well that others gathered to watch her screen. Here are a few more photos of Anne. In 2021, just after her birthday, Anne was suddenly diagnosed with cholangiocarcinoma, a cancer of the bile ducts in the liver. The tumors were deemed inoperable because of how they were embedded in the arteries and veins, and a liver transplant was not possible. She had several rounds of chemotherapy, which reduced the size of the tumors, but could not be used indefinitely. 2 different oral medications were tried, but these were not effective. Ensley had the creative idea to give the first treatment, the chemotherapy combination, another try. And while this was not a usual course of treatment at this point, it was approved, but was not effective for long. In April 2024, Ann came under hospice care. She was very fortunate that this kind of cancer does not usually cause pain. Her energy and weight slowly went down, but she did not feel uncomfortable. In October 2024, she awoke one morning with significant abdominal pain. An evaluation by the hospice team diagnosed her as having a digestive rupture, which meant she could no longer have anything to eat or drink. Over the next 16 days, her energy waned more. Ensley was here. Ann had a hospital bed in our guest room, and it often seemed like a sleepover, with many of us in her room, chatting with her or working on crochet projects while she slept. We all became skilled at seeing to her needs. We had many kinds of meds available, but she didn't need much. On the morning of the 20th, we awoke to find that she was gone. There you have it. We all miss Anne something fierce. I think only now is it really dawning on me that she is gone. We count ourselves blessed to have known this really remarkable, life-loving person. Last night I dreamed that she showed up with a suitcase and a backpack and announced that she was going on a trip. So I think that's true. She surely has made her mark on all our lives. Thank you so much for coming.